How much better of a track is Nebraska on right now than they were 1 year ago?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Podcast Network, by the way, now the #1 sports podcast network. Mitch?
All right. Welcome in. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. It is Thursday, November 13th. We are a week and 2 days away from Nebraska's next football game at Penn State. Huskers are on a bye week. It's been an interesting week. We heard from Matt Rhule on Monday. Lots of talk about resources, lots of talk about Emmett Johnson. It's been the week of Emmett Johnson. The week of NIL. And we're going to do an episode today where we look a little bit into the future and into the past. And we're going to look first into the past. So I was thinking this week about the world of Nebraska football 1 year ago right now. It was you could say a fork in the road. Maybe it was a crossroads. Those are two different things, but whatever. You get the point. So a year ago right now, Nebraska had lost 3 games in a row. It was headed out to USC with a new offensive coordinator and a freshman quarterback who was coming off of a game that he couldn't finish at home because of an injury. And Dylan Raiola, at this time 1 year ago, to be honest, looked a little bit lost in what was happening around him and what he was trying to do. The special teams were a disaster. Nebraska didn't have a lot of playmakers on offense. It didn't have resources, as we have discovered in NIL, to retain all of its top players and to compete with top teams for the best talent in the portal. That doesn't all sound great. This was before Dana Holgorsen had coached a game in Lincoln. He was getting ready for game 1, before Nebraska underwent changes at defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator with Mike Eckler. So what I would say is that no one is arguing Nebraska at this point at 7-3 has fixed everything. In fact, it's as close to being 8-2 as we discussed yesterday on the show, and number 20 or slightly higher in the CFP rankings as it is to being 5-5 this year. And that's where I want to go with this. So if Nebraska didn't do X, Y, and Z, if it didn't do what, it might be 5-5 right now. Things might look a little bit things might look a lot worrisome as this team headed into the next 2 weeks against Penn State and Iowa. What brought Nebraska up a notch that it's done in the past year?
Mike Eckler. I mean, that's
number one on your list.
It's an interesting way to look at it. I think so. I mean, I don't see too tremendous of a difference, offensively or defensively year over year. I think there was a slight step back because of the personnel you don't have anymore that you mentioned there on defense. And there's a slight step up on offense because of the personnel that you do have there. I think you have better receivers and obviously a better running back this year over year. Although that person is mostly not a different player. He's the same guy, just he's a better version of himself. But I think the quarterback, at least prior to TJ Lateef, Dylan Raiola, is maybe marginally better than he was a year ago.
He's better than a year ago. I would say he's better than a year ago. We're talking about Raiola. The QB play is better than it was a year ago if you look at the numbers from 2024.
And definitely before they've removed Marcus Satterfield and moved to Dana Holgorsen at the end of last year. But I don't know that it's progressed as quickly as I sort of would have thought that it would have this year. Sure. And so you sort of add all those things together and you're like, well, I don't know what's making up for the difference here. They're not turning the ball over at a significant rate, and that wasn't really a problem last year. And they're making up for what they lack in a lot of cases in the margins. And special teams, I think, has won them several games this year, or maybe who knows how many games that they would have lost by making crucial mistakes. They haven't really done that. And special teams, I think we would both agree that it's actually gone out and above, and it's actually won them some games this year. So I think in my opinion, you have to start there. And there's some other things that are just, a tick better than they were a year ago, but that one is way, way night and day better.
Yeah, I would say, and we can look at this from multiple angles. If you want to say where has Nebraska improved the most, what has it done to its team that has turned it from a 5-5 team at this point going into the final 2 games a year ago to a 7-3 team this year? Special teams, hands down, wins that conversation. If you want to say what's the move that Matt Rhule made that started all of this, the first domino to fall, where if this didn't happen, if X didn't happen, none of the things or very few of the things that followed would have happened. I would look back at this week a year ago or last week a year ago when he brought in Dana Holgorsen. Because even though you may not look at the offense right now and say, oh, yeah, it's night and day different, I think that started it. Because I think without Dana Holgorsen coming in and Matt Rhule showing and making that statement that he did in November of last year, showing that I'm going to think outside the box, I'm going to do something different, going to be bold in the way that I approach fixing this situation. And they had a situation after a 3-game losing streak to go into November last year. He's a year and 2/3 of the way through his time at Nebraska, and it was stagnant. It was almost moving backwards, which is something that Matt Rhule has never done as a college coach. So he got drastic. He brought in Dana Holgorsen from the outside. I think without Dana Holgorsen, Dylan Raiola probably doesn't stay last December, because I just don't think there is enough of a statement made. There is enough of a direction about where Nebraska's headed with its offensive system. You don't get Isaiah Hunter. You don't get Dane Key in that spot. Clearly, Dane Key is a direct result of Dana Holgorsen coming, because he followed Da'Keel Shorts to Nebraska. Da'Keel Shorts was a Dana Holgorsen guy. I don't know that you get Mike Eckler in that spot, because I don't know that there is the momentum that warrants Mike Eckler leaving his job at Tennessee in a stable situation to come back to Nebraska. I don't think he looks at it and says, yeah, I want to get in on that, jump on that train right now. So to me, Holgorsen and his addition, despite what you may think about the way that the Nebraska offense has looked at times this year under his guidance, is the thing that started all of this, like they're 10-0 right now.
Yeah.
That's not what I mean, but they're in a much better position than what we saw a year ago. You can get lost in the fact that 7-3 and unranked is not all that great, but consider where Nebraska was at 5-5 coming out of that USC game in 24.
Yeah, I still think there's no doubt that the floor is higher than it was before, right? Like it's hard to imagine what it looked like a couple years ago, and then at some points last year, and then obviously compared to this year. So I think you're right about that. The floor is most certainly higher, and the foundation exists for Nebraska football now. As far as how much better the offense is or how far it's progressed, I wish it would have gone faster. It hasn't, and I think there's a question in there, buried in there about how sort of Matt Rhule wants to win football games. His original vision to win football games, and he's always going to probably lean toward the defensive side, and maybe that's why you haven't seen the full capabilities of Dylan Raiola in this offense yet, or part of the reason why. Well, that and the fact that he's going to miss the rest of the season at this point. So it's an opportunity for them to kind of go back and look at that and tweak their math equation a little bit in the offseason. But right now you have TJ Lateef, and that's why not to go off tangent completely here, but that's why people look at this. That's why I look at this TJ Lateef situation and I say he might be the best quarterback for right now for them. Because you kind of have your minds made up for you, given his skill set and where he's at in his development right now. So I'm excited to see what these next 2 games look like in this offense, even though they may not mean, they may not be indicative of the direction where it's headed offensively next year.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable saying that TJ Lateef's style is better for Nebraska's situation right now than Dylan Raiola's style is, as opposed to saying TJ Lateef is the better quarterback for Nebraska than Dylan Raiola is right now. Yeah, they needed something that was a little bit more dialed down and in line with the running QB. You know, it's funny to kind of cap this conversation about how we gloss over what the position, like the dire nature of the position that Nebraska was in last year, and just the buttons that Matt Rhule had to push even to get it to this place where they're 2 games better. You said in a few minutes ago that, hey, the turnovers weren't that big of an issue last year. Obviously they were in 2023. Nebraska was minus 17. Yep. Everyone knows that was a giant problem. So Nebraska last year in the second half of the season was minus 8 in turnovers in the second half. So 6 games plus the bowl game, minus 8. Like that's about what they were for all of 2023 at minus 17. Yeah. So, right. So, I mean, if you're minus 8 for half of the season, you extrapolate that out over 12 games, you're almost to minus 17. It was moving in a bad direction before the seismic change of early November last year. And you could argue, we'll see. I mean, this is probably a question that might be better asked a year from now or 2 years from now. But did that week or 2 week period when he really went out on a limb, the head coach, and said, I'm scrapping the offense, or I'm scrapping the leadership on the offensive side in the middle of the season, did that set Nebraska on a path that is going to lead them to be in the college football playoff in 2026 or 2027 or 2028?
It definitely saved it from completely going off the rails. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you know, if it goes too much further down that road, you know, like you said, Dylan's probably not here this year. I still don't think you figured that out though. So you have to do it in order for that to really come to fruition. But you're right. I mean, it could have gotten a lot worse if they didn't make a move when they did in 2024.
I mean, is Latif even here? Like, I don't. It's a legitimate question. Like, he was unsigned at that time a year ago. Right now, part of the intrigue for me when I went to see him play the Friday night before the USC game was to make sure that he was solid on his commitment, because he was having a good senior season in high school, and there hadn't been a ton of talk around Nebraska about, you know, this vision of what he was going to be. Now, he committed early in the process, and he was an early enrollee, and generally those guys don't flip late. But if the offensive coordinator is going to get fired in December or, you know, demoted, that can be a tough spot and for any quarterback. And he certainly would have had suitors if he didn't see the stability that Nebraska was able to show in the last couple of games, the last 3 games of the regular season. So, yeah, I think it all changed.
Maybe there's a big thing in these next 2 games that get you feeling that we'll look back on in a year and we'll say, hey, if they don't figure this, not necessarily a personnel move, but I think the ability to win these 2 games is gonna, you know, if you do it, that'll be thought about for a while. When Nebraska went through all but 1 game of November undefeated in 2025, if that happens.
It definitely has the potential to be that kind of a moment again. All right, let's take a break. Come back. We'll look forward. We just got done looking back. We'll look forward and do a little roster math. That's next.
But first, let's talk a little bit about the FanDuel Sportsbook, where the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So you can get in on live bets, meaning if you miss out on the start of the game, there's no problem with that. You could just jump in whenever you'd like during an NBA game on FanDuel. You could even go live same game parlays as well. Or for those maybe a little bit more prepared, you can jump in on the spreads, the totals, whatever you might want to do. Season long stuff is still out there. Did you see Nikola Jokic have an insane game last night? 55 and all sorts of ridiculous stats for him. He's the best player on planet Earth. Wager on Nikola Jokic. That might be a good idea. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back, and thank you all for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Okay, so roster math. We teased this a little bit yesterday, and Mitch put together some of the numbers here as we start to map. It's a good time to do this, by the way. It's a bye week, and you're thinking about what the next 2 weeks holds, and there's going to be decisions to be made all across the board, as Matt Rhule alluded to the other day. So whether it be professional decisions or transfer portal decisions, that will impact how many people Nebraska needs to go out and get. And the question we're wondering is how active might December be for the Huskers?
December and January. Remember this year in a big change on paper, the portal opens on January 2nd, and it's 2 weeks. It'll be the first half of January. All we're going to be talking about is every day getting hit over the head with news about the portal. And some of this will be leaked in December, I think, especially the departures. So you'll know that players are headed into the portal because Hayes, Fawcett, and the others who have the players on their speed dial,
and
make the graphics, can report this in December. So and so is expected to go into the portal when it opens on January 2nd. But where they're going to land, that's going to be a fire drill in the early part of January. So December a little quieter, January insane when it comes to the portal. And the question that I've heard a few times this week after Matt Rhule talked about Nebraska's new spending power is, all right, so what kind of a season is it going to be in the portal? How many players do you anticipate that Nebraska might lose this year? We remember last year in December, it felt a little bit helpless early in the month when you saw Jamari Butler, Prince Will Umanmielen, Nate Borkercher all leaving like on back-to-back days. You had Keona Davis go into the portal and then come out. You had Emmett Johnson say he was going to go into the portal and then not do it. So things changed, and Nebraska actually ended up winning the portal last year because it added 4 starters on defense, 4 starters on offense, and then 2 specialists who have been mainstays for the Huskers. And I'm talking about Kevin Gallick, the long snapper, and Kyle Cunanan, the kicker. Archie Wilson did not come from the portal. There is no portal from Australia. He came via the traditional recruiting. Yeah, that'd be a big portal.
Travel.
It might be a little bit difficult to navigate the portal. Okay, so what's it going to look like this year? This is both fairly simple in terms of the numbers and also complicated. So we'll go through this. Total players on the 2025 roster is 125. Departing seniors this season, 19. Players with remaining eligibility, do the math, 125 minus 19. 106 players with remaining eligibility. Now, players who do not count against the 105 player man limit is 20. Nebraska has 20 non-counters on its roster this year. They were designated internally last summer when the 105 went into effect. Problem is, we don't know who they are. They could all be returning in 2026. And if that's the case, then Nebraska can add 19 new players before anyone goes into the portal. That's recruits and transfers. Let's say 5 of those non-counters are seniors, and you lose those 5 seniors. Then you lose those 5 non-counting spots. Nebraska could then add 14 players as of today via the portal and committed recruits. They have 11 committed recruits. Okay? Today, if Nebraska loses no one to the portal, which is an impossible scenario, there are going to be players going to the portal. It could add 8 transfers to those 11 committed recruits. If it loses 10 players to the portal, it could lose 8. It could add 18 transfers. If it loses 15 to the portal, it could add 23. Does all of that make sense, or did I just say way too many numbers in a short period of time?
No, I think it's well laid out. The problem that people are going to have to follow along with it is that the numbers will be meaningless because Nebraska will invariably have anywhere from 10 to 20 guys enter the transfer portal, and then you have to adjust your numbers every time that happens. But you accounted for that. So it's good to get a baseline to start off with. And Nebraska is going to be really active in the transfer portal. I think what they've done in recruiting this year has pointed that way. It's not a strong class right now, and it's not a big class right now. So whatever you lose will theoretically be replaced with transfer portal guys, whether they be long-term lottery ticket flyer guys who kind of double as recruits, or proven production. And you gotta, that's just a matter of what you can get and who's available to you.
My best guess on what happens is that none of the non-counters are seniors. I look at the senior class, I go through it. I don't see anybody who jumps off the page at me as someone that Nebraska would have designated as a non-counter back in June. And it makes more sense to have the non-counters among your underclassmen, because then you get to have those kind of like special spots on the roster, those exempt spots on the roster for a longer period of time. So my best guess is that Nebraska is going to sign 13 or 14 on December 3rd through the 5th. That would mean that they add 2 to 3 more commitments to the class over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Yep. They've got 4 offensive linemen in this class. They've got a quarterback. They've got a running back. They've got a lockdown corner. What they don't have is a big defensive lineman, or a couple of big defensive linemen. So if that's not, and signing a freshman to that spot is not the best way to go. Like, you may want to go to the junior college ranks for that. If there's somebody out there,
did offer a junior college. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, my best guess is they'll sign 13 or 14. The JUCO guys would count in that class, not in the portal ads. That they'll lose 12 to 15 in the portal this year. Last year, Nebraska lost 30 in the portal. And part of that was because they were trying to cut down the roster to get to this place where the 105 limit is there. 12 to 15 in the portal. If you use the high numbers there, 14 signees and 15 in the portal departing, then they could add 20 transfers. So that you can do a lot with 20 transfers. Nebraska was at 15 or 16 a year ago, and I don't think you would see them try to get a bunch of bargains in that among those 20. There still would be some. You got to get a long snapper. You are going to look for some developmental players in the portal, but the likes of Isaiah Hunter, Dane Key, Williams Winery.
Let me ask it this way,
Elijah Pritchett, Rocco Spindler. I think you see Nebraska go after more of those kind of players in January.
Maybe this could be a segment tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow because we have the mailbag, but maybe it could be a segment at some time when we talk about this again. But like, how many direct starters right now came out of the transfer portal this past off season? Like, there's at least
10.
A handful.
10.
And then how many will they need next year? How many starters will they need to acquire in the transfer portal this offseason? Is that number bigger? Is that number smaller? Obviously, a lot of it depends on if guys hop back in to the portal or whatever happens with that. But as of right now, like my working, the reason this came up in my head anyway is because that it feels like they'll need less because of how young they are. But like I said, the portal, you just really never know what's going to happen.
They're going to need at least 2 starters on the offensive line. They're going to probably need a running back. Well, that's if Emmett Johnson decides to go. They're probably going to need a wide receiver to replace Dane Key. Quinn Clark can maybe step into that role. Yeah, you can start going through this. They're going to need a bunch of guys in the secondary. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is just because those are the guys you pay. Those are the guys you pay significant money for, like the guys that have produced in college already, and you need to come in and start right now.
If you're looking to really upgrade things and make this a college football playoff contending roster in 2026, I think they're going to need about the same number that they added here in 2025, which, as I said, was 4 on offense, 4 on defense, and 2 specialists. Like, it's not going to be much different than that. And yeah, those are the players that you have to pay for. And if it gets up to that, I'm estimating that they're going to have spots for about 20 transfers. And if that ends up being even close to the case, yeah, I mean, you're going to spend big on about half of them, or maybe slightly more than half, because you can't afford misses on those positions where you're looking to replace a starter.
All right, so let's put a pin in that for 6 weeks, and we will talk about it in December, probably a little bit sooner than 6 weeks after Nebraska's regular season wraps up against Iowa. Let's take a quick break. We'll make some picks for the weekend. Speaking of Iowa, they got a big game this weekend. We're back after this.
All right, a word now from Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. More than 280 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Supply House's real inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting your projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts? Supply House has next-day delivery. That's a game changer. The parts finder tool and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs when every detail matters. So join the free TradeMaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5. That's SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, hope you survived that math lesson that we went through there. We are going to do some more math here and talk about point spreads in Week 12 of college football. No game for Nebraska, but eyes will be on various places in the Big Ten. Nebraska's next final two opponents of the regular season are in action. We're also going to focus our eyes on a couple places in the SEC. There may be, Connor, two opponents with which Nebraska is very familiar in big games this week that sit out there as possible bowl matchups for the Huskers. What would you think about Nebraska playing A, Oklahoma, or B, Texas in a Florida type of bowl game this year?
I would love to play Texas. I would love for Nebraska to play Texas. And the reason I prefer Texas over Oklahoma is just because you haven't seen them since you actually left for the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma, you've played a home and home with. So that's basically it. But yes, both of those are tantalizing, very, very enticing bowl opponents.
Nebraska, Texas on December 21st in Kansas City in the national championship of volleyball matchup, and then Nebraska, Texas in the Outback Bowl in Tampa 10 days later.
The ReliaQuest now bowl.
Yeah. ReliaQuest.
Yeah.
Sorry.
ReliaQuest.
Yeah. Do they still give you? Do you still get?
No blue Outback's
not involved at all anymore. Not even like as a
so.
secondary sponsor. You can't going to go there and get a bloomin' onion or a Outback special steak.
That's real
like a prime rib or something.
Because they were really leaning into that at the end of their sponsorship, and I don't know what ReliaQuest does. So I don't know, they give them like insurance or something like that.
Nah. Okay. Both sponsors are getting worse. Although some of them are still good. You can get them.
They could give them, some antivirus protection or something like that.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten. We're number 21, Iowa. This is in the playoff rankings, not the AP poll. Number 21, Iowa is at number 17, USC, 2:30 p.m. Saturday on Big Ten Network. You can watch this game even if you have YouTube TV. The Trojans, the Iowa and USC fan bases hate each other, by the way.
It's great.
The Trojans are a 6.5 point favorite.
That's been awesome to watch. Kirk Ferentz had some sideways comments a couple years ago when USC joined the league. And
they weren't about Lincoln Riley. Okay.
They
were about Scott Frost. Kirk Ferentz had some comments. He had some comments about Scott Frost and about a coach that was new in the league and had put up big offensive numbers somewhere else.
He used that example to apply to USC.
He did. He talked about both Nebraska and USC in the same answer.
Yes.
But he was more critical of Frost in Nebraska. This was his statement about wins per game.
Wins per game. Yep. Kirk's got a formula, all right. And I do think they have it down pat this year with Gronowski, the running quarterback. Weather not going to be a factor likely in this game in Southern California. No. But guess what? It's November. It's the Big Ten. I still like Iowa to cover the 6.5 points.
Yeah. I don't really disagree with you. The matchup to me kind of favors Iowa. I think Iowa's going to make life miserable for USC.
They do a great job at playing the game on their terms, and they're going to do that as they always do.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take the Hawks as well. I'm not going to be so bold to say that Iowa's going to win the game, but to give Iowa 6.5 points in November in the Big Ten, wherever it is, I'm down with that.
I took it last week against Oregon, and I'm happy to take it this week. Let's go to Penn State, who's a 7.5 point favorite at Michigan State. This is the CBS game this week between two teams with a combined 0 Big Ten victories.
Yeah. Michigan State has like 0 official Big Ten victories now in the last several years. Because the NCAA Committee on Infractions came out yesterday with some bad things to say about the way that the Spartans' former coach was handling his program. I think we already knew that, but sorry, Jonathan Smith. I wish I could say that I believed in Sparty this week at home. I don't imagine this is going to be a hostile environment for Penn State. The Nittany Lions have shown some life the last couple of weeks and hanging with Ohio State for the first half of that game in Columbus, and then going toe-to-toe with Indiana at home. And it took a miraculous finish for the Hoosiers to get out of Happy Valley with a victory. So I like Penn State. I actually like Penn State to win by double digits in this game and somewhat right the ship coming back for senior day against Nebraska a week from Saturday.
Yeah, it's sort of a tough ask to ask this kind of mentally beat up team, the up and down team, to go cover 7.5 on the road. But I just think Michigan State is way more down in the dumps, obviously, than Penn State is. So I'll take the road. I'll take the road favorite here in Penn State. I don't love to do that with all those points to cover, but I think Michigan State is just toast at this point. Let's go.
Is Jonathan Smith going to make it out of this month as the Michigan State coach?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like they like him.
Yeah, it seems pretty fluid right now.
Fluidity. All right, to the rest of the world, and by the rest of the world, I just mean the SEC. Oklahoma and Alabama. Alabama's a 5.5 point favorite. This is your 2:30 ABC game this week.
Well, Oklahoma beat the Crimson Tide a year ago in Norman. I don't think it happens again. I think Alabama's rolling and hasn't lost since that very puzzling, now appears very puzzling opening week loss at Florida State. I like the Tide to do some damage in this game and solidify their hopes to get a bye in the first week of CFP play. Alabama, give me Alabama, and I'll lay the points.
I hate to do this, but I think you're right. I think Alabama's going to win, but I don't like them by that much. And so, Oklahoma has the ability to kind of really expose Alabama's weaknesses, which is being able to stop the run. Like Oklahoma kind of has to do that because of just how they are right now as an offense. So I think if Oklahoma could get them to play it on their terms, I think this is going to be a close game, and we'll project that to happen. So give me Oklahoma plus 5.5.
Yeah, John Mateer, the OU quarterback, was the early season leading contender for the Heisman, and then he suffered the thumb injury and came back against Texas probably too early and has not been himself in the run game or the pass game since then. So if he can get on track and be the kind of runner that he showed early in the year, then that's a problem for Bama, but I think the ship sailed on that.
All right, and then Texas goes to Athens to take on Georgia, who is also a 5.5 point favorite. This is your SEC night game on ABC.
Yeah, I kind of like Texas. I think Georgia has just played with its food really all year, and Texas is a program that maybe Texas has found something. Texas has won 4 in a row, and maybe it's found something here where the talent is actually going to rise to the top, and you get into a fourth quarter with Georgia, and usually Georgia just says, all right, it's the fourth quarter. We're just going to bully everybody and push them around, and Texas stands up to that a bit. Probably doesn't get out of Athens with a victory, but I could see a 3 or 4 point loss for the Horns.
Yeah, I think Texas kind of views this as a situation where they get a Ohio State redo, like they're still on They're still on the table for the college football playoff. So yeah, I think they've sort of adjusted and kind of steadily built back week by week here. But yeah, give me Texas and give me Texas to win. I think they'll go in there and win this game, show some mettle.
Some are saying that Texas could still make the college football playoff as a 3-loss team, that it's the only team out there that could make it with 3 losses, that if the Horns lose at Georgia and then beat A&M, there's another game in there before Thanksgiving or Black Friday when Texas plays Texas A&M, that at 9-3, Texas could get in and go on the road for a first round game.
Yeah, they'd have some good wins. Obviously, their Vanderbilt win, and then if they win this Georgia game or the Texas A&M game, whichever one, that Florida loss sticks out as the sore thumb.
Yeah.
But
Ohio State loss. I mean, if you lose to Ohio State, yeah,
fine. Yeah.
Who does Texas play next week before A&M?
Arkansas.
Okay, coachless Arkansas. Yeah. All right, that does it for us today. Watch all the football on Saturday. Well, we'll be back tomorrow with a mailbag. Send us a question for the mailbag if you haven't done so already and you want us to answer it. You can get us on email. It's the best way to do it at lockedonneb@gmail.com. We will have that show, and then we'll be back on Monday to get heavy into Nebraska Penn State week. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig is there to break down the most exciting conference in college sports. You can find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.